Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, we meet again. Thank you very much for watching my channel. Today, I'm going to continue with chapter 8. Last week, I did chapter 8, 8.1 and 8.2. So today, I'm going to finish off with the respiratory system. Okay, so specifically, we're going to talk about the gaseous exchange in the human lung and also the types of diseases associated with the type of what you call the diseases in the human. Okay, so I'm going to share screen now. Okay, I hope you can see this. All right, so gaseous exchange in humans. Okay, sorry, I think I've gone a bit too ahead of the slides. Okay, let me go back a bit. All right, so in 8.3, we are going to, you always see this diagram. Okay, you always see this diagram that explains the what you call the exchange, the gaseous exchange between carbon dioxide and oxygen, and this occurs on the respiratory surface called the alveolus. Okay, now the questions that you can get is normally you have to explain why the air, that means the oxygen, that the diffusion oxygen occurs from the blood capillaries to the alveolus or the other way around. Okay, why does, let's say, the diffusion oxygen occurs from the alveolus into the capillaries and not the other way around? Why doesn't oxygen diffuse from the capillaries into the alveolus? And at the same time, why does carbon dioxide diffuse from the blood capillary into the alveolus and not the other way around? In fact, you cannot say, let's say your answer is because there is no oxygen in the blood capillary. That's not true, actually. There is oxygen in the blood capillary. But why doesn't the oxygen from the alveolus, why doesn't the oxygen from the blood capillary diffuse into the alveolus? Why is it the other way around? Why is it the alveolus, the oxygen from the alveolus diffuses here instead? Okay, so there is a reason. Or you have to explain the reason. The reason is because of the concentration, or we call the partial pressure of gases. Which side will have more gas? Which side has a higher concentration of gas, of carbon dioxide or oxygen? So here you always have to explain that why is the direction of diffusion for oxygen always from the alveolus into the blood capillaries, and for the carbon dioxide is from the blood capillaries into the alveolus. Okay. So in order to answer that, we have to go back to what you understand with diffusion. Okay, that we've learned earlier, diffusion. So now we have to look at this term called partial pressure. When you have to explain why the diffusion happens from alveolus to the blood capillary or blood capillary to alveolus, it depends on the partial pressure. Now the partial pressure is something like the concentration that you've learned, concentration gradient when you learn about diffusion. Always a region of liquid or region of gas, or what do you call gas? You always, the particles always move from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. Okay, this is a law, right? That happens if you have more. You will try to move away from a region that is more into a region that is less. So gas diffusion, where it diffuses from where to where, it always depends on the difference in partial pressure between the two places. Okay, so try not to use concentration of gases, but use this correct term called partial pressure. Okay, so partial pressure we will symbolize with a capital P and a CO2 and a PO2. Okay, after you see my diagram. Okay, now gas always diffuses from a region of higher partial pressure to a region of lower partial pressure. That means down the concentration gradient or down the partial pressure gradient, or we say along the partial pressure gradient, not against. Against is the opposite. Okay, so here you see that the partial pressure of a gas whether it's oxygen or whether it's carbon dioxide that is exerted, the partial pressure is dependent on the percentage of the concentration. It will be higher. The partial pressure of that gas will be higher if the concentration is higher. Okay, so I repeat the sentence here. The partial pressure of a gas is the pressure exerted by that particular gas, and it is higher if the concentration is higher. So you know in the inhaled air, we got more than one type of gas. We have got oxygen, we have got carbon dioxide, very little. Then we have nitrogen. We also have other gases called the inert gases or the noble gases. So each type of gas here has its own partial pressure. Okay, so my next slide will help to explain this. Now you see, if we talk about the concentration of gases in the atmospheric air, okay, atmospheric air, the pressure of atmospheric air is 760 millimeters of mercury. This is if we're at sea level. Okay, we're not talking about in the ocean, you're under the sea, that'll be higher, or you're not talking about in the on the mountains where the gas will be much lower. So if 100% of the gas, let's say, okay, atmospheric air, you have 78% of nitrogen. This one you've learned in Form 1. Okay, the composition of atmospheric air. 78% is nitrogen. Then you have 21% is nitrogen. You also have carbon dioxide, which constitute only 0.03%, and inert gases about 0.97%. So if you add them all together, you get 100%. Okay. Now each type of gas will have its own partial pressure. How much of the partial pressure is dependent on the percentage. Okay. Kenneth, I see that you're here. Academia. Okay, good evening. Yes, good evening, Academia. I know your name already because you PM me. All right. So Kenneth, good evening. So let's get back to this lesson now. So how much of the partial pressure that the gas has dependent on the percentage? So let's see. If nitrogen has 78%, that means the partial pressure of the nitrogen will be higher compared to oxygen. Okay, it's like these are the simple principle. Let's say all these four gases, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, inert gases, there are four people. Okay, there are four partners of a company. Let's say a company, 100% of the shares. Nitrogen holds 78% of the shares of the company. Oxygen is only 21%. Okay, the name of the person now. Okay, carbon dioxide is 0.03%, very little percentage of the shares of the company, and inert gases 0.97. Now, if the company makes profit, okay, the company makes profit now, you have dividend. All right, you got to pay back all these people who invest and also who owns the company lah. So if your what do you call the dividend, okay, or the keuntungan of the what you call your profit is, let's say 100 million. You have to divide the 100 million to these four people, correct or not? All right, nitrogen, nitrogen has 78%, so he holds the majority of the stocks. That means he owns more than half of the company belongs to him. So of course, it's natural, it is logical that he will get more of the profit, isn't it? You cannot use 100 million of the profit and you divide to four, and each one get equal portion of 25 million. Then the person who's nitrogen will say, hey, it's not fair. I am holding majority of the stocks. Why am I getting the same percentage as carbon dioxide, which only holds 0.03%? Okay, so the profit that the person gets will be proportional to the amount of stocks that the person holds, correct or not? So same thing here. If nitrogen constitutes 78% of the entire volume of the gas, okay, so definitely the partial pressure will be higher, okay, because it contributes more. Okay, the nitrogen will contribute more to the partial pressure. So how do we calculate the partial pressure of nitrogen? Now this question, don't worry, they're not going to ask you this kind of calculation, but I want you to understand what is the partial pressure of gases. The partial pressure of gases is the percentage, okay, is the pressure exerted by that gas, and it is dependent on the percentage of the gas. So let's say nitrogen is 78% of the gas lah, all right? So that means the partial pressure will be 78 over 100, because 100 is the percentage. 78% is 78 over 100 times the atmospheric pressure, 760 millimeters. That means the pressure of nitrogen is 592.8 millimeters, about 593 lah. So out of the 760 millimeters higher, the pressure that can exerted by a column of mercury, about 592 millimeters of it is actually the pressure that comes from the nitrogen. Okay, so it's same. You do the same for oxygen. It has 21%. It constitutes 21% of the air. So that means the partial pressure will be much less. 21 divided by 100 times 760, 159.6 millimeter mercury. That is the pressure, partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, so it's the same for carbon dioxide. It just times with the 760 millimeters. Okay, so it's inert gases. And if we add up all these 592.8, 159.6, 0.23, and 7.37, you will get 760 millimeters mercury. So each gases contribute different pressure, different amounts of pressure to the entire volume of gas. Okay, so you will find that the higher the concentration of the gas, right, the higher the partial pressure will be. Okay, so let's look at how to explain. Okay, when the question comes, explain the process of diffusion. Okay, how does oxygen get to be transferred into your blood vessels and transported to all over your body and to be supplied to your body cells? Okay, so you've got to talk about oxygen and carbon dioxide. Depends on the question. If the question wants oxygen, you just talk about oxygen. If the question wants carbon dioxide, you just talk about carbon dioxide. So we must begin our story in the lungs, okay, because the lung is where the oxygen comes in. Okay, so how you explain? So you have to talk about why the oxygen happens to diffuse from the alveolus into the blood capillary and not the other way around. Even though the blood capillary has oxygen, why doesn't the oxygen in the blood capillary go into the alveolus? Okay, but why is it always we can see the net movement is only from the alveolus going into the capillary? So it's not right to say there's no oxygen at all in the blood capillary. There's only lower concentration. Okay, let's start. Now in the lungs, all right, in the lungs, the partial pressure, so you got to use this word, partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolus is higher than in the blood capillaries. So we are comparing two places where the partial pressure of the oxygen in the alveolus and also the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood capillaries. Okay, so that means if I have higher, so here I can see here is higher, right? Higher partial pressure. And here is PO2 refers to partial pressure, the symbol for partial pressure, capital P and O2. Now here in the blood capillary will be lower. Okay, so that means as a result, because your diffusion, as you know, always higher go to lower. As a result, oxygen diffuses from alveolus into the blood capillaries and not the other way around. Okay, because this side is higher and this side is lower. All right, okay, so that's how you explain about why oxygen goes in from the alveolus into the blood capillary. Okay, and then what about carbon dioxide? Okay, after that, oxygen will combine with hemoglobin in the red blood cells to form oxyhemoglobin. Okay, and then it moves in the red blood in the blood capillaries together in the red blood cells. Okay, so the red blood cell transports the oxygen. Okay, now what about carbon dioxide? You also need to explain now why carbon dioxide always is diffuses from the blood capillary into the alveolus and not from alveolus into the blood capillary. Okay, the reason is because in the alveolus you have very low low partial pressure. Just now we saw the percentage is 0.03 in the atmospheric air, but in the blood capillary, you know that there's 16%. There's 4% of carbon dioxide. So it's much higher the percentage of carbon dioxide in the blood capillary compared to in the alveolus. So again, you start the story by saying blood that enters the blood capillaries contains a higher partial pressure of carbon dioxide compared to the alveolus. So this blood is coming from the heart that pumps the deoxygenated blood. So it comes to the lungs to carry more oxygen. This will have more carbon dioxide, okay, because these are the blood that's already released the oxygen to the body cells. So now it comes back to the lung to get more oxygen. So the carbon dioxide will be higher, 4% actually. And in the alveolus is 0.03%. Okay, so as a result, carbon dioxide diffuses out. You must mention the direction, diffuse out from the blood capillaries and into the alveolus. Okay, so the words, the direction is very important. You need to explain where it goes. Okay, so partial pressure, remember to use partial pressure, remember to use the word direction from where to where. Okay, so that is the story in the lungs. Now the blood carries your oxygenated blood from the lungs, right, through the pulmonary vein. It comes back to the heart, and the heart will carry this high blood that has high partial pressure oxygen to the body cells. Okay, then after that releases the carbon dioxide to the body cells. So we're going to talk about this one later. How is the oxygen released from the blood into the body cells? Why it goes from the blood capillary into the body cells and not the other way around? Okay, so here blood that leaves the lungs through the pulmonary vein has a higher partial pressure of oxygen and of course a lower partial pressure of carbon dioxide. When you're high in oxygen, you'll be low in carbon dioxide. And after that, it releases the the oxygen and carries more of carbon dioxide. It will be returned back to the heart. So this heart, the blood that returns to the heart will have a higher partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Okay, so now we're going to explain the direction of diffusion in the body cells. Okay, so this blood now reaches the body cells. Now we're talking about at the body cells. Okay, so we have our body cells here, and this is the flow of red blood cells. Okay, now talking about oxygen first. Why does oxygen diffuse from the red blood cell into the body cell and not the other way around? Okay, in the body cell, you also may have a bit of oxygen, but it's actually at a lower partial pressure. Okay, so how you start to explain? At the body cells, the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood capillaries is higher than in body cells. Now, why? Why body cells will have very low oxygen? Okay, the reason is because body cells is constantly carrying out cellular respiration 24 hours a day, using up the oxygen to produce energy. So always your body cell is using up the oxygen. Whatever oxygen that is being supplied to the body cell, it will keep on using it. So you will always have a lower concentration of oxygen in the body cells compared to the blood capillary. Okay, the blood capillary will always carry more oxygen. Okay, so because you have a lower concentration of oxygen in the body cells, therefore the oxyhemoglobin inside the red blood cell automatically will break down. Okay, the bonds holding the oxygen to the hemoglobin molecule, it will break and the oxygen will be released. Then the oxygen diffuses from the blood capillaries into the body cells. Okay, that's how you explain the direction of movement of gases of oxygen into the body cell. Okay, not the other way around. And then also you talk about oxygen. If the question asks you about carbon dioxide, you have to talk about carbon dioxide as well. Okay, so see, what's the story about carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide on the reverse is always carbon. Body cell will have more because, as I said, body cell carries out respiration 24 hours a day, and it produces energy. And one of the substances as the side, we call the side product of the respiration is carbon dioxide. So you always have a higher partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the body cell compared to in the blood capillary. Okay, so at the body cells, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is higher than in the blood capillaries. Okay, because cellular respiration releases carbon dioxide. So you always have a lot of carbon dioxide produced by the body cells. And because of that, as a result, here that the body cell has got more, carbon dioxide will diffuse out from the body cells. And you also must mention into where? Into the body blood capillaries, and again it's transported. Now it's transported back to the lung to be removed. Okay, to be excreted in the lungs as a carbon dioxide gas. Okay, so that is how you explain why oxygen travels this way and not the other way. Same thing for carbon dioxide. Okay, so that is 8.3. All right, now another thing we need to learn after this is how is carbon dioxide transported in the body cells. We have learned earlier that in Form 3, you have learned that oxygen diffuses into the red blood cell. It combines with hemoglobin. It forms oxyhemoglobin. Okay, oxyhemoglobin. So now, that is the majority of it lah, about 90 over percentage of the blood, of the oxygen is carried in the form of oxyhemoglobin. So that is the oxygen storage. But now we need to know about how is carbon dioxide carried in the blood. Is it dissolved in the blood plasma, or does it go into the red blood cell? Okay, or how? How is carbon dioxide carried in the blood? Okay, so we need to learn this now. So transport of carbon dioxide in the blood, actually there are three ways. There are three ways where carbon dioxide is transported. Okay, the first way is the majority one. Majority, the most of it, most of the carbon dioxide, about 70% of the carbon dioxide is carried in the form of bicarbonate ion. Bicarbonate ion is HCO3 minus. Okay, you learned that in chemistry. So majority of them actually is carried in the blood plasma. So here, it's not in the red blood cell. 70% is carried in the blood plasma. Okay, so we'll see how it forms. We're going to see that later. Then the lesser portion of your carbon dioxide, about 23%, it combines with hemoglobin. No? So hemoglobin also has the ability to combine with carbon dioxide. But this one forms carbaminohaemoglobin. Okay, not carboxyhemoglobin. I'm sure you must have learned in last time in Form 3. There's one part where you say the blood carbon, that's carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide, when you breathe in carbon monoxide, it gets to be it's bound by the hemoglobin. You will get carboxyhemoglobin, and that interferes with your supply of oxygen to your body cells, and that's why people get carbon monoxide poisoning. Okay, and you get carboxyhemoglobin. That is carbon monoxide. But if carbon dioxide binds or combines with hemoglobin, you get carbaminohaemoglobin. So don't make the mistake. I know a lot of people get confused. Instead of writing carbaminohaemoglobin, they write carboxyhemoglobin. That's wrong. Carboxyhemoglobin is formed when carbon monoxide combines with hemoglobin. But if carbon dioxide combines with hemoglobin, you get carbaminohaemoglobin. Okay, this is the lesser part, 23%. And the minority, okay, you still have a small percentage of your carbon dioxide. This is your carbaminohaemoglobin. And then lastly, the least amount of your lesser amount of your this carbon dioxide is dissolved in the blood plasma. Okay, so it goes into the blood plasma as the dissolved form of carbon dioxide gas. It doesn't convert into bicarbonate ion. Okay, so you have three methods. So what we are concerned is we have to explain the first one. Okay, you need to know how to explain the first one. How is, oh sorry, what happened here? Okay, how is this, wait, my screen got a bit confused. Okay, now how do you get this 70%? How do you form the bicarbonate ion from the CO2? How do you form the bicarbonate ion? Okay, so we got to see this. All right, clear? Now, so you see a summary. This is a summary. Don't need to remember the equations. Don't worry about the equations. In biology, you don't really need to write the equation. You write in words. You write in words. We don't penalize you. Okay, you write in words what forms what and so on. So the first one is when we're talking about this one, the HCO3 minus. This is your bicarbonate ion. Okay, so we're going to explain this in a while. Okay, this is the one. Then the second form is 23%. It is combined with hemoglobin and you get your carbaminohaemoglobin. Okay, then the third one, about 7% only, very little, is in the form of dissolved gas, CO2 gas, dissolved in the, what do you call the plasma, blood plasma. Okay, for the number 1 and number 2, it involves the red blood cell. For number 3, it does not involve the red blood cell. It just goes into the plasma. Okay, and for the oxygen, okay, oxygen, all right, the third one, I think oxygen, of course, is almost 99% of your oxygen is carried in the oxyhemoglobin form. And after that, it will break down, the oxygen is released, it passes through the cell and goes into the cell. And about 1% of the gas, the oxygen gas, is found in the dissolved form. Okay, the dissolved one, this one. Okay, so this one, this is lesser. So don't need to worry about this. You just remember your hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobin, and also the bicarbonate ion. So we're going to explain now how does this carbon dioxide form bicarbonate ion. Okay, so first of all, we are referring to this. How does it form bicarbonate ion? It has to go into the red blood cell in order to form your bicarbonate ion, because the process of converting into bicarbonate ion happens in the red blood cells. Okay, let's see the first one. Now, how to explain? All right. Now, carbon dioxide released by the body cells. Okay, because of respiration, there will be a lot of carbon dioxide, higher partial pressure inside there. Once it is released by body cell, it will diffuse into the blood capillary, and once it's inside, it will go into the red blood cell. It binds with water, so there's water in the red blood cell. Once it binds with water, okay, it's your CO2 there, right? CO2 enters the red blood cell, and then you have water as well. Water is inside lah, okay, also outside, inside. You combine these two, right? It gets combined, you get carbonic acid. So the first thing is produced is carbonic acid first, not directly into bicarbonate ion. You get this carbonic acid, H2CO3. All right. Okay. Now after that, this gets converted, right? So it breaks down. Now this combining of carbon dioxide and water is aided by or catalyzed by this enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. Okay, carbonic anhydrase is an enzyme that helps to form carbonic acid from your CO2 and H2O. Okay, now what happens to your carbonic acid? Okay, so you see your carbonic acid is H2CO3. Then now what happens is your carbonic acid will break down. It will break down into bicarbonate ion, which is HCO3 minus, and also hydrogen ion. Okay, don't worry about the symbols. You write in words. Just remember bicarbonate ions and hydrogen ion. So the hydrogen ions, okay, remains in your red blood cell. Okay, now this bicarbonate ion now is formed. It will diffuse out. Now it diffuses out into the blood plasma, and it will be carried into the lungs. So this bicarbonate ion is not in the red blood cells. It will be diffused out. It diffuses out from the red blood cells into the blood plasma. So this bicarbonate ion is actually in the blood plasma. 70% of it, of the carbon dioxide is in this form. Okay, so now this bicarbonate ion is carried to the lungs to be excreted. So now we look at the story. What happens when it comes to the lung? Okay, what happens to your bicarbonate ion when it comes to the lung? Okay, next one. Now the bicarbonate ion comes to the lung. This is the alveolus here. So it's going to be released to the lung, right, to the alveolus. But it's not released in bicarbonate form. It has to be converted back into carbon dioxide. Okay, it converted back into carbon dioxide. So how do you convert your bicarbonate ion back into CO2? So it's actually the reverse of what we saw just now. It is the opposite. Okay, let's see the first one. So now when the bicarbonate ion reaches the lung, so now we're here at the alveolus, it diffuses back into the red blood cell. Just like it's outside, right? It was in the blood plasma. Your bicarbonate ion is carried in the blood plasma. So now it has to come back into the blood cell. Come back first. It diffuses into it first because you want to convert it. You want to convert it back into CO2. It happens inside the red blood cell. Okay, so this is your HCO3, which is your bicarbonate ion. And inside there, you will have hydrogen ion. Just like I said, hydrogen ion was in your red blood cell, right? So now it's combined back with your hydrogen ion, right? That's already also inside there. You get back your carbonic acid, which is your H2CO3. Okay, H2CO3 is a carbonic acid. It's a reverse. It's a reverse of what you did now. So the carbonic acid now, it will break down. Again, the same thing. Okay, just now carbon dioxide and water, you combine, you get carbonic acid. So now carbonic acid, when you break down, you are going to get back carbon dioxide and water. Also catalyzed by the same enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. So as you know, enzymes can work both ways. Okay, whether reverse or forward or backward. Okay, the reaction is the same enzyme. Okay, so you get carbon dioxide being formed back inside the red blood cell. Okay, so now what to do now? Your carbon dioxide will diffuse out of the red blood cell into the blood plasma and also into the alveolus, and this will be expelled during exhalation. Okay, so always remember, you need to just remember one part of the story because this one is the reverse. So remember how it forms your bicarbonate ion. You should be able to explain how the bicarbonate ion is converted back into carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is what 8.3 is about. We have to explain how the whole process works. And the marks come from how technical are you? Are you able to give the names or not? Okay, so the marks will be given based on the correct explanation of the process. So you have to look at this again and again in order for you to remember. Okay, you cannot remember just by looking at it once. So that's what revision is for. Okay, so now let's go to the last part of chapter 8, which is the health issues. Okay, so health issues here for the human lung, all right? What are the diseases that can infect your lungs? Okay, we're not talking about lung cancer. So we're talking about these three diseases or these what you call conditions that will cause difficulty breathing and so on. Okay, so these called collectively, these diseases that cause difficulty in breathing and damages the lung, all right? These are called COPD. Okay, COPD is a medical term, right? Doctors will use it. It's called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Chronic means it can last a long time. You see, it's not acute. Acute is just like when you have what they call infection of bacterial infection. Okay, you are infected and you have your phlegm and all that. But after 2 weeks, you should be all right. Okay, the infection clears, the bacteria is dead and so on. Then you don't have any more the symptoms. So that's called acute infection. It comes and goes. But chronic, it can be a long, we call it berpanjangan. It takes a long time. Okay, it can come again and again and again. Obstructive, that means it obstructs your airway, right? Pulmonary means your lungs. Disease is a disease. So you need to learn and remember three. One is asthma. Some people are born with asthma, okay? Chronic bronchitis. So chronic bronchitis is the lungs, we call it the bronchus, the bronchial air are affected by exposure to a lot of this dust and smoke and so on. There are a lot of mucus formed inside there. We call bronchitis. Not acute, this is chronic. Chronic means it's because not of bacterial infection. When it's acute, okay, it could be bacterial infection. The infection, once it clears up, then you don't have it anymore. But bronchitis can be for a long term, this chronic. And lastly, emphysema. So remember ACE or ABE, okay, B for bronchitis, asthma, bronchitis, and emphysema. Okay, later on towards the end of the lesson, the last part, I'm going to tell you the differences between asthma and bronchitis. They are very similar. A lot of people are not able to differentiate between asthma and bronchitis. The symptoms are very similar. Okay, but of course, a trained doctor will know, right? Now, asthma. What are the characteristics of this asthma condition? The bronchioles, you see the normal one is on the left-hand side. The one on the right-hand side is the person who has got asthmatic attack, okay? That you see the bronchioles have become swollen and they're thicker. The walls have become thicker. The muscles have tightened. When you have an asthma attack, the smooth muscles around the bronchioles, they will tighten up, they will contract. So when it contracts, it makes your airway very narrow. And that makes the air difficult to go in, okay, go through and transported to the alveolus. Okay, so on top of it, you may have thickened airway, thickened wall. The wall becomes thicker, okay, due to irritation, sensitivity. People get asthma, sometimes it's sensitive to their pollen grains. You have an asthma attack when you just smell something that is very dusty, okay, you get air hazy, haze can trigger your asthma. You smell cigarette smoke can also trigger your asthma. So it's a bit of sensitivity as well. Okay, so bronchioles become thick, swollen, narrow air passage. So this is always characteristic of all this COPD. You have narrow air passage, difficult for the air to pass through. Reduced airflow, okay, air that goes in is very little, okay, because of the narrow passage. Then the tightened muscles of the airway the muscles will constrict or contract here. So it's difficult to let air. You can't control it because it's smooth muscle. It's involuntary control, this involuntary action. So the muscles get contracted, okay, they will squeeze and you can't relax. So you need medication to relax. People who are asthmatic, they will have to carry what you call some medication that you spray you smell it, you have to inhale it into your lungs, and it opens up the airway. So that medication will help to Ventolin and so on. Okay, it will help to relax the muscles and your airways open, so the person will have easier to breathe. Okay, difficulty breathing is always a what they call the symptom of the asthma. Okay, next, breathlessness, not enough air, right? Because the airway is too narrow. Okay, so now let's look at the causes, the symptoms and the causes. This is usually also what is the causes. Okay, what is the symptom first? You have difficulty breathing, all right? You have breathlessness, not enough breath, like that, all right? And then tight chest, the chest feels tight because of the constriction, the muscle tightens. The one on the left is normal, the one on the right is the person is having an asthmatic attack. Okay, and then wheezing. Wheezing is the sound that you make. Some people, because it goes through your larynx, right? The air goes, it brushes through your larynx, so you get sound. So you get that kind of sound when you breathe. Okay, it's called wheezing, noisy breathing. What causes people to have asthmatic attack? So sometimes, actually, most of the reason is because the person is inherited asthma. It can be inherited asthma. Okay, but the attack will not come. The attack will come when you are exposed to irritants, things in the air that can irritate your lungs. So cigarette smoke, maybe somebody around you is smoking, and then you inhale that smoke, and then you immediately get asthmatic attack. Okay, then chemicals in the air, allergens. These are the proteins that are found on certain things like pollen grain. Allergens like the pollen grains, they have the protein coats, okay, and that will trigger your body to have this asthmatic attack. Allergens is things that can make you sensitive, right? And then air pollutants, okay, allergic reactions because of allergens. So air pollutants, haze, smoke, dust, all that when you inhale into your bronchus. Okay, now cold weather as well. Cold weather, because it will makes your muscle tighten more. So when you have cold weather, all right, it can also cause you to have an asthmatic attack. Okay, now bronchitis. Bronchitis is very similar. You'll find that the characteristics of bronchitis are very similar, but with differences is slightly more of there is a lot of mucus production. For the asthma, there could be mucus, or there sometimes is no mucus also possible for asthmatic attack, with or without mucus. Okay, but both have thick walls. The bronchus wall have thickened. That is the similar thing. Okay, so here bronchioles become inflamed. That means infected. Sometimes it's bacteria. Bronchitis can be caused of bacterial infection, or it could be irritation from the air also. Swollen and blocked. Okay, so bronchioles become inflamed, swollen, and blocked. Very similar to the asthma just now. Excessive mucus. This is something not so similar. Just now we talked about asthmatic attack. We don't normally have that much mucus. It could be with or it could be without. But this one, bronchitis, you have a lot of mucus. So you may cough up the mucus. Okay, mucus is like the humus, the nose that the thing that comes out, very sticky and very gooey, right? And that is very disturbing for you, right? Then you have reduced airflow because the airway is already narrow, and difficult to expel the mucus. Okay, sometimes difficult to cough it up, and difficulty breathing. So this is similar to the asthma. Okay, now let's look at the next one. What about the symptoms and the causes? Causes are also quite similar. The symptoms here is difficult breathing, same as asthma. Prolonged coughing, okay, you cough for a long time. This is chronic bronchitis. Tight chest, okay, and wheezing. You may also have wheezing, right, because the narrow airway. Now causes also very similar. Exposure of the lungs to the irritants. Cigarette smoke, right? Allergens, these are the things that causes allergic reaction. Pollen grains, okay, dust, air pollutants. So similar causes, similar symptoms, but there is slight differences we will see later. For asthmatic, it can be inherited. Bronchitis is not inherited. Bronchitis, this condition, bronchitis, whether it's chronic or acute, is not inherited. You cannot pass on to your children. Okay, it's not through the genes. So it's because of irritation and also because of infection from bacteria that causes all these things. Okay, next one. Emphysema is totally different. The cause is not of the bronchiole becoming thicker. It has to do with the alveolus now. Now we look at the alveolus. If you look at a healthy alveolus, the one on top here, you have Sorry, and one at the bottom is normal. Okay, let's look at here. Normal bronchial and normal alveoli. You see the alveoli are complete. You can see they are round, air sacs here. They have the wall here, all complete, right? Complete, complete walls. Okay, they're separated, small little alveolus. But if it's emphysema, because of the cigarette smoke, one of the reasons because of cigarette smoke is corrosive. The chemicals that are corrosive, and it actually corrodes the wall of your alveoli. So some of the walls are missing. So you can find the alveoli enlarged because the two have already combined together. The wall in the middle has disappeared, so you get a bigger alveoli now. So having bigger alveoli is not better. Having bigger alveoli means the total surface area per volume ratio is lower. Okay, and there's mucus in the bronchiole. So this is triggered by usually smoking. All right, so alveoli loses elasticity. That means it's not elastic anymore. This one has to do with alveoli. Okay, just now the bronchitis and asthma is more to do with the bronchioles and the bronchus. So this is alveoli. So it increases in size because I mentioned you combine. The wall in the middle that separates your alveoli has already been corroded. So it combines and the size increases. And this actually reduces the total surface area. And when that total surface area reduces, that means diffusion is less. When diffusion is less oxygen can be diffused into your blood. So you get less oxygen delivered to your body cells. So you're just breathless. One of the symptoms also breathless. Usually these are smokers. Okay, smokers will have these cases of emphysema. Okay, gaseous exchange become less efficient because diffusion is lesser because of the total surface area. So you tie all that in. All right, okay. So now let's talk about symptoms and the causes. So you can see clearly the alveolar wall, some parts of it are missing. Okay, symptoms, have difficulty breathing, or them COPD is everything to do with difficulty breathing. All the COPD, your symptom is difficulty breathing. Okay, short of breath. Okay, cannot get enough air into the lungs. Exposure to irritants, okay, especially cigarette smoke because it's corrosive. The gas is acidic, it's corrosive. It corrodes the tissues, corrodes your lung, the wall of the alveoli. Then smoke right? Others with chemicals, smokes, dust, things that happen to find its way into your lungs. So try to avoid places that are polluted. Try not to have dirty air into your lungs. All right, okay? So lastly, what about asthma and bronchitis? It's very difficult. This is, you're not really required to explain the differences, but it's something for you to know so that you up your game, all right? You are a bit more informed about biology facts compared to other people who do not know the differences. So asthma and bronchitis is more same symptoms, right? Coughing, difficulty breathing, and so on, but different causes. Okay, slightly different causes. Okay, let's look at the similarities here. Airways are inflamed, all right? The wall of the bronchioles and the bronchi, they are, bit thicker. Difficult for air to enter the lungs, narrow airways. Okay, similarities, right? Symptoms, wheezing, whistling sound when breathing, right? And then shortness of breath, not enough breath entering your lungs, and so on. Coughing is one of the signs that you're not getting enough air, so coughing, right? And so tightness in the chest because of the squeezing action and so on of the smooth muscles around the bronchioles, okay, of the bronchus. Now, differences. Okay, what are the differences? Differences are, now asthma is, some of it may be inherited. Okay, you may have asthma genes in the family, so people are born asthmatic, but no such thing as people are born with bronchitis. There's no baby born with bronchitis. Bronchitis because of what you inhale into your lung that gives you bronchitis. Okay, triggered by what? Okay, so asthma triggered by allergic reaction. Okay, exposure to chemicals, dust, smoke. So triggered by tobacco smoke also. Bronchitis. So this can be quite a similarity. Not really differences. I don't find it differences here. You find that it's also triggered by almost the same thing. Smoke, dust. Okay, it's almost similar. Now the next one is the phlegm. Phlegm is like your mucus, all right, your sputum or phlegm. Asthma, you may or you may not have the phlegm. Okay, the phlegm is called kahak, the one that you expel when you cough. So for bronchitis, you always have mucus because it's irritation, okay, and also inflammation. So there is going to be mucus that is produced in your airways. And then for asthmatic, because it's not a bacterial infection, there's no fever. Okay, you don't get fever. But bronchitis is an It could be bacterial infection, it could be viral infection. So you may have fever, chills, body aches, headache. Okay, this is for acute bronchitis, which is caused by bacterial infection. The infection, your bacteria managed to find its way into your bronchus. Okay, so this is a lesson for today. So I hope that you have found get a better understanding of the differences of the 8.3 and 8.4. Help you to answer some questions for the exams. Okay, so next week, hope to see you next time. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. So I will see you another time. Thank you very much, and bye bye. Have a good weekend. Okay, bye bye.